And let's finish The Secret of the Indian by Lynne Reid Banks. We're at the epilogue. It is Boone and Ruby's wedding. Tickle is officiating, and we will pick up from there. "He ain't much of a preacher man," confided Boone to Patrick, tapping his forehead. "He went downhill fast after they burned his church. The liquor, you know, ain't everyone's got a haid for it, like me. But he's still got it in him to do what's right." "You ought to help him rebuild the church, Boone," prompted Emma. "Who, me?" exclaimed Boone, but Ruby gave him a nudge, and he said, Yep, good idea, maybe." The wedding was held in Omri's room. It was rather dark, because the hole in the roof was still covered with a big roofer's canvas. There wasn't any furniture except the built-in bunk, but they spread a sheet over the floor and lit a circle of candles and set everything up the way they wanted it. There was a tiny altar made of pieces of decorative stone, with a single daisy on it, a stained-glass window made of scraps of colored tissue paper with a candle shining through it, and of course a feast of food, including a miniature wedding cake that Emma had found in a rather posh baker's. It was still as big as a table to the bride and groom, but Little Bear would help cut it with his knife. They had lots of crisps, crushed fine, and hundreds and thousands of dishes made of tiny shells from a necklace of Emma's. There was 7-Up for champagne. The cupboard was nearby, a little to one side. Its door was symbolically ajar, and the recovered key was in the lock. Emma, who had a feeling for these things, had made a little triumphal arch of flowers and a Lego step leading up to the bottom rip. No one mentioned it, but they all knew the little people were going home through it as soon as the wedding party ended. Patrick, Emma, and Omri had a long, fraught discussion about the whole business. "This has got to be the end of it." It was Omri who said it. Patrick knew it too, but he couldn't come right out with it. It was Emma who didn't accept it, who put up a fight. "It's all right for you two," she raged. She was nearly in tears. You've had it for ages, last year, and you've time-traveled. It's not fair. It's just not fair." "We've got to, Em. It's too dangerous for them." "We can keep them secret. We have." "For how long?" Patrick asked quietly. "Before Tamsin finds out. It's been a pretty near thing once or twice already, or someone else." Emma was silent. She was struggling with her tears. The boys were uncomfortable. They understood too clearly how she felt, because they felt it too, more than she did. "But I love Ruby," Emma burst out. "I can't give her up. Never see her again. It's like telling me I have to say yes to her dying." The boys didn't look at each other. "I've been thinking about the wind," said Omri slowly. "What do you mean, the wind? The cyclone? It's done an awful lot of damage. It ripped down millions of trees. It practically destroyed Kew Gardens and lots of other places." "So what? What's that got to do with anything? It wasn't our fault." "But I think it was." The other two looked at him. "Look, we interfered. We felt bad about the Indians dying. And now we've done this. Don't you understand? Everything that's happening, Boone being hurt, the cyclone, even Mr. Johnson's car, it's us. It all happened before because we found out a magic trick and messed around with time." "Good things happened too," said Patrick defensively. "Like what?" "We helped Little Bear defeat his enemies." "Yeah, well, he'd probably have done that anyway. And now we've shown him modern weapons. And you see what it led him to, borrowing Boone's revolver because it made killing so much easier." "That's going to happen anyway," said Patrick slowly. He, too, had been doing some reading. "White men coming along, interfering, if you like to call it that, changing the Indians' way of life. It's already well begun in Little Bear's time. He knew all about guns. We only gave a little push to what was bound to happen." Omri thought about what he'd read about the way American Indians live now, in reservations, their hunting grounds taken from them, their songs and their gods discredited and lost, many of them alcoholics, beginning only recently to struggle back to their own ways and traditions and beliefs, after centuries of bad times, horrible times. I don't want to give that kind of push," he said. "It's got to end." The other two were silent. Emma gave a deep sniff, then she said, "But as long as we've got the key, we'll always be tempted." Omri reviewed the many, many thoughts he had about that. He had envisioned himself burying the key, but he knew that wouldn't do. Better to throw it away into the Thames, into the sea. He'd tried to imagine himself doing what he knew to be the right thing, but every time something stopped him. In his imagination, he would draw back his hand. The key would be about to fly from it, to sink, to drown, to be lost forever, and he would stop. He could never do that. The solution he had arrived at was not perfect, but it was the best he could do. It had been born of the deep, long, strong fear he had suffered, and the pain of knowing that they had meddled where they shouldn't, and done a lot of harm. I'm going to ask my dad to take it from me and put it in the bank. I'll make a secret package of it with the cupboard. He won't know what it is. He'll tell them to keep it in a vault and not give it back till I'm dead. Emma and Patrick stared at him, awestruck. Dead? Omri nodded solemnly. But who would they give it back to, then? My children. Emma spoiled the moment by giggling, the idea of Omri having children, but then, his solemn face took her laughter away. She said, And will they know? Will you tell them what it is, what it does? I'll tell them a story. I won't tell them it's true. I'll leave it up to them. That way it won't be quite lost. Only to us. We've done enough. The Reverend Tickle played the wedding march as the bride came up the aisle. Matron was at her side to give her away. Little Bear and Fickets were the best men. It needed two to support Boone. At this last moment, he was seized by an attack of nerves. I can't go through with it. I ain't good enough for her, he muttered, his face flushed crimson through his bristles. Besides, a man can't get hitched without a hat. 'Tain't legal. I'm getting out of here. And he turned to flee, but Little Bear and Fickets had strong hands on him and held him firmly until his bride reached him. Ruby Lou, in a wedding gown, with her blonde hair down in a lace veil, floating around her like mist, was very different from Ruby Lou in scarlet satin. Boone was so smitten at the sight of her that he was struck dumb and his knees buckled. Luckily, Tickle had anticipated this, and as he quickly moved from the piano stool to the altar to begin the service, he discreetly passed his flask to Fickets, who gave Boone a restoring swig. My very last, Boone vowed, but even Ruby, tenderly taking his arm, didn't look as if she quite believed him. Just near the end, Bright Star's baby began to cry. Matron tutted and said, Shh. But Little Bear and Bright Stars looked at each other and beamed. Good omen, cried Little Bear, interrupting the I-do's. Baby's voice, sign of health, long life, many hope, much children. And he let out a marvelous baying cry of pleasure that sent a shiver of excitement and happiness through them all. And that is the end of The Secret of the Indian. There are 2 more books in this series, one of which I have right here, waiting to read you as soon as you request it. Otherwise, you can wait until December when I will get back to that series of books. I will see you next time.